It's Tuesday, May 20th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, it's gardening day, folks. We've got tips, and the lines are open to talk grow season, everything you want about grow season. It's also World Bee Day. We're talking beekeeping and how we should all be inspired by nature to nourish us all. I'll tell you, that line, be inspired by nature to nourish us all, I did not write that. That is the United Nations you can thank for that pun, because 20th of May, World Bee Day. They say be inspired. Folks, so let's, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about bees and gardening. Tim Walsh is back in the saddle, nursery manager, horticulturist, Memorial University Botanical Garden. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's nice to be back, Adam.
Thanks.
It was an interesting winter, so it seems like we're off to a good start in terms of the garden. We just need a bit more heat.
A bit more, yes.
Yeah.
Heat would turn up that. Yes,
yeah, turn up the thermostat a little bit.
Thermostat just a bit. And we've got a partner with you today. Raylyn White is here, master beekeeper. Happy day, happy bee day.
Thank you for having me and spreading the word about bees. The buzz.
Get the buzz, buzz. I'm sorry, I did not dress appropriately for today. Can you mention?
Neither did I.
Neither did you.
So
I didn't send you the memo.
I have been talking to Adam back and forth about me coming here today, and I gave strict direction that he was supposed to wear something bee-related.
I thought it was rhetorical. Is rhetorical a thing? Is that how it works?
And he's dressed in black. So
well, bees have black on their body.
they
at
do,
least.
yeah. So I'm dressed in yellow and black leggings with my queen bee shirt on. So I'm with the season of bees.
You sure are. Yeah.
I love it. It's so good. I love it when my guests thematically match the conversation. You can't do it every day on the Signal, but today just so happens to be one of those days. Folks, yes, we're talking about bees and gardening. It is it's slightly different, but it is still just like a regular gardening day. So if you want tips, we're here for you. And in this case, today, with the extra theme, we can talk bee tips too, right? We can talk about beekeeping, and we're going to. So 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206. Emails thesignal@cbc.ca. And before, so I've got a couple questions for each of you. Everyone, like I said, the lines are open. Tim, I did get a note before the show this morning through my Facebook, because when you host a show that gets back into gardening season, you start to notice sometimes people email the show, sometimes they email you, sometimes they text my personal phone, other times they send me Facebook notes, and I love all of it because it's like, hey, however you get in touch with me, that's all that matters for the show, as long as you're not like calling me at 3 a.m.
That's right. Yeah, you have your limits.
That's where like, Adam, I've got a gardening question. It's 3 a.m. No. Here's the question. Our Saskatoon berry bushes / trees in the backyard, they have had a fungus of some kind, and the fruit turns to rust and is not edible. We were hoping we could get them treated before they bud again. There's probably 20 or so bushes. They start at the right side of the shed and extend around the back and out a ways. Is May too late to save them for this year?
Yeah, so it's a very common rust. It happens in all the Amelanchiers, which is that genus, all throughout the province. It's just a natural part of, unfortunately, the fruiting. The fruit is apparently still edible, although I generally tend to pick the ones that don't have the fungal growth on them. Usually with fungal growths on trees and things, it's a better idea to spray, because you can get a fungicide. You can get a fungicide for that, and it's just a generic fungicide. You would find that, like a copper sulfate or something like that. Go to your local nursery. They'll get you the right one. Usually it's applied before the leaves bud out. It's a pre-bud flush application. You actually apply it and you drench the branches and the buds and everything before they come out. That has the best effect on combating it for the season. Sometimes with these things, because they're here, they're natural, they're on all that. It sounds to me like that this person has a collection that stems out the backyard, and maybe they're bordering on a forest, and so they just kind of blend into the forest. That's usually it's often when you hear people are growing Amelanchiers, that it's because that's where they live as opposed to people. Not many people around here plant them, interestingly enough, because they're a beautiful flowering plant as well. But that if it's out there in the wild, it's going to be constantly spreading in. So it's a kind of a annual thing. You spray them each spring. Now that time has passed now because they're already leafing out. But better now than not at all.
Right.
And that will help to control them a bit more if they get at them now. So, but just to keep in mind for next year, to get out there very early in the season, just be around after the frost is done, if there's ever such a time. I'm assuming that we're past frost now, but you know what I mean? Like when you know that things are starting to come to life, get out there and drench the tree. At that point, you'd have a better result from that.
Yeah, so even like 2 weeks ago type of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
End of April, start of May.
Yeah.
When the frost is done.
Yes, yeah.
Raylan, we'll go to you. Bee Day, right? How long have you been doing this for?
I've been beekeeping about 6 years.
Okay.
I did the University of Montana beekeeping program. That was a 3-year program.
Cool.
Yeah, so really enjoy it. It's as a social worker, it goes hand in hand with sort of self-care and therapy, and so it brings a lot of rewards and benefits. Yep.
For this time of year, one thing that came to mind because you told it to me, but I did know about this. Can you touch on swarming for a minute?
Yeah, so we're getting into swarming season.
Oh,
so that's pretty darn exciting. I did 4 splits on my hives this weekend. And
so what does that mean?
So swarming is basically when the hive becomes too full. So generally it happens when beekeepers don't check their hives enough.
Yeah.
Like this time of year, you're supposed to check them weekly. And in that check, you look at the population. You look if there's swarm cells. You look if you have a queen, you have eggs. But this time of year, you really focus on the swarming. So if you notice that your hives are becoming overpopulated with bees, it's pretty easy to slap another box on there or else do a split. Unfortunately, people don't do that, and those are the people that lose their bees through swarming. So what happens is that the bees lose the queen's pheromone because there's just too many bees in the box for it to be passed around. Yeah. And they just make the decision, they give lots of hints to the beekeeper that this is going to happen. And then they just, half the hive just takes off and plants themselves in a tree, while the other half stays. Swarms have only a 23% chance of survival unless they're chosen or captured by a beekeeper.
Right. Wow. So pay attention to if you've got bees. Pay attention to
Absolutely. Like weekly hive checks is what you need.
Weekly hive checks. And then if someone does see a swarm, best thing to do is get in touch with the
Absolutely. Reach
beekeeper.
out to me. I'm also connected with Orkin and another Terminex here in the city. So they'll call me as well if there's a swarm. But yeah, I have a Facebook page, Bee Haven. You can drop me a message there. I'm expecting to be quite busy, so I look forward to that.
Excellent. Thank you. Where are things at with the botanical garden? You said we could use some warmer temps, but so what's this the spring bloom like for the process?
Yeah, it's pretty good. What we're appreciating at the botanical garden in particular is that we were able to get out in the garden fairly early this year. Where there's been years where we couldn't open the botanical garden to the public until middle of May because of snow cover and ice cover and that sort of thing. So we're not having any of that. So certainly things have come to life earlier and more consistently this year. The cold. I joke about the cold this time of year, but it is May in Newfoundland, right? It's never really a warm time here.
No.
I think we all just like to come down hard on the weather, but in reality, it's not terribly uncommon to have these types of temperatures in the middle of May. So, and the plants that we select for our gardens are plants that are adapted to this environment. So, there's no doubt we play around with some things that we'd like to be able to grow, and maybe we'll get away with a few of those this year because the winter was mild, and so sometimes with a mild winter, it's like a double-edged sword. So you get. You get protection from the fact that there's not a lot of frost. But at the same time, you don't get any snow protection for when we do get some frost, because the snow is an excellent insulator for plants.
Yeah.
And so it creates that nice little blanket. The best scenario for our perennial plants is that they're asleep underneath a nice blanket of snow.
Tucked in for the winter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We didn't get that this year very much.
No.
So when we did get cold temperatures, luckily we didn't get too many, but when we did get cold temperatures, it went into the ground and went deep into those roots. But again, we didn't get long periods of super cold, so it really didn't go that deeply. So the survival rate this year was really, really good.
I find I'm a bit of a baby when it comes to like the May colder, not yet quite warm. So I'll run through the winter, right?
Yeah.
And wintertime, I'm going out. I've got like my layers on and running stuff, and it can, it's winter running, so you run.
Yeah.
And they're like, so for the May temperatures, there are times through the winter where I'd be like, oh, you'd get a warm day of 5 degrees, you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And now we're in a 5-degree May, and I'm like, oh, it's so cold. I don't know if I'm going to go for. I'm not going to go out there.
I know,
I can't.
funny.
And it's like, you baby at it.
Yeah.
Just go for a run now. And same for folks going out in the garden. What should we be looking at now for, like, if you're looking out in your garden, you've done zero.
Yeah.
What types of things should we be looking at doing?
Oh, well, the first thing in the spring is the cleanup. So you really have to go out there and clean up. So there's going to be leftover plant debris from last year. There's going to be stems that need to be cut back. If you have winter protection on there, that should be off.
Yeah.
It should be off already. But if you didn't get to it for whatever reason, get out there today and get it off there, because the plants are under that winter protection. They're starting to grow, and they need to get to the light. So get all that off for sure. Raking up around the base of trees and around the garden itself. A lot of, especially if your garden is amongst any kind of deciduous trees, if it's below that. So all that leaf litter that fell last year, there's no way we get it all. Even if we rake them up in the fall, there's always still some left. And it's not a bad idea to leave some anyway for a bit of added winter protection and a little bit of an ecosystem for the insects and things that thrive in that environment. But now's the time to start cleaning that up and to get down to the soil level again and identify your plants, find them all. And now thinking about, does your soil need any kind of enrichment? Because now's the time to be putting on any kind of topsoil, mulches, composts, any of that sort of thing. Now's the time to be digging them in. Now that's certainly the flower garden side of things. And the vegetable garden is a different animal altogether, because the vegetable garden is an open book in the middle of spring. There's generally nothing in it.
No, yeah.
Which is great, because it gives you lots of room to move around. You don't have to worry too much about damaging anything when you're doing that work. So, but now's a perfect time to get in there and put on some of that well-rotted compost and that manure, kelp, any of that sort of stuff, and incorporate that into the soil and help to build up that soil, because there are some vegetables that can be already sown, and lots of people have sown a few things. But a lot of folks are also sowing seeds indoors and getting them ready for transplant out into this garden when the temperatures warm up a little bit more. So now the vegetable garden is all about just getting that soil ready, because vegetables are a little bit different than a regular flower garden, in that a vegetable garden does everything in one season. Everything from a seed to a harvested plant, harvested whatever it is, whether it's a vegetable or fruit, it all happens in one season. And so it's a very intensive growing, so it really relies heavily on the soil. And so, oftentimes we get lots of calls at the Botanical Garden about, people are disappointed with their vegetable garden production in the year. And when we talk to them and you kind of try and have that conversation, you break it down to see what really might be the problem. Most often, it's the soil.
Bad dirt.
Yeah, bad dirt.
You got a case of bad dirt. That's what you got. That's why your carrot's only 2 centimeters long as opposed to longer.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's all about the soil.
Raylene, so we got a caller. Before I go to the caller, just quickly, if folks are interested in getting into the business of bees, what's the what are the first steps you do? Because it seems like a bit of a responsibility.
Absolutely. The thing that I would recommend any person when they're thinking about getting bees is education.
Yeah.
I'd say take the first year and just learn as much as you can, watch as many reliable YouTube videos that you can get your hands on, and just try to connect with a beekeeper and have those conversations. The next year, well then yes, I would take the step into bees. But again, it's a big commitment. This is something that you have to care of all year round, not just in the summer months.
Yeah, it's like getting a cat that makes honey and then also produces more cats.
So there's about 60,000 bees in one box. So there's a lot. There's a lot of furry friends in there that you want to take care of.
Yeah.
So you want to know what you're getting into, obviously, before you purchase a nuke.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Gardening Day, folks. 709-722-7111. 1-800-563-8255. Text us 709-327-8206. The Signal at cbc.ca. Here with me in studio, Tim Walsh, Nursery Manager, Horticulturist at Memorial University Botanical Garden. Raylene White, Master Beekeeper. So it's pollinators and also the stuff that gets pollinated and grows today on the show. George Williams is on the line from Gander. George, how you doing?
Very educational show. I love this show, Adam.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you like it.
Raylyn, first of all, I'd like to ask you, what's this big deal about Manuka honey? It sounds like a bit of a miracle honey.
It is. We don't have that honey here in Newfoundland. I believe it's, I don't know.
Is it Kiwi? Is it from New Zealand? Is that where
Yeah, I believe
Australia
so.
and New Zealand, I think.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not quite sure about that one, but I know it has some pretty interesting qualities if you do consume it. But yeah, we don't have that here in Newfoundland.
You said regular old honey.
Regular old honey, wildflower honey is my favorite.
That's right. Yeah.
Is it true that when you use honey, like for tea or something, that you shouldn't use stainless steel spoon?
For sure, you can use like a wooden spoon. That's what they usually come with. But you know what? Good for you for using honey in your tea. There's a lot of medical, benefits of using honey for sure instead of sugar. So I guess you use that regularly?
Yes.
Good for you.
What happens if you use a stainless steel spoon?
It's just something with the honey, the crystallized and stuff like that.
Oh, that
I heard
could
it
explain
sort
a
of.
lot, actually.
Yeah, somebody said it kind of kills some of the nutrients or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Note to self on that one. Thanks.
How about, is it true that you shouldn't put honey in the hot tea? You should wait for it to sort of cool a little bit.
No, I think you could go ahead and put it in any temperature.
Oh, good.
When I was in Louisville to the Bee Expo, they had thousands of honey. Like every beekeeper brought a jar of honey into the Bee Expo, and they had this big table full that anyone who has coffee and tea, you could line up and take whatever honey you want. And I mean, the coffee was hot, the tea was hot, but he just scooped it in.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool.
Oh, cool.
Thank you so kindly. And Tim, a few questions for you, please.
Sure.
I recently bought a globe blue Colorado spruce.
Okay.
And it's only like probably about 14 inches tall. And I'm just wondering, I wasn't sure, but I assumed that it's grafted. And any idea, any particular care that it would need?
No, those are beautiful little plants. Just be mindful of where you put it because it seems small now, but they do get quite a circle on them as they age. I say that out of personal experience. I planted one in my own garden many years ago, and it's now pushing out into the walkway, and I have to do something about it. I have to prune it a few times, but now I'm going to have to think about moving it, which is a bit of a chore. But no, the spruces they like the conditions like our native spruce does. So acidic soil, which our soil is naturally acidic anyways. Just general garden soil will be fine with that. The brighter sun that you grow this plant in, the easier it will be for it to maintain its blue color. So keep that in mind. And and really that's it. Just if you want to maintain the shape of it, just prune after the new growth comes out in the spring. Just prune the very small little bit off the tips of it each year in order to maintain the shape. But other than that, it should be fairly good.
According to the tag, it says it gets 3 feet tall and 6 feet wide.
Okay, wow, that's bigger. That's bigger than mine. Certainly, maybe it's a different variety. But so keep that in mind then when you're planting it. So so think about that circumference, especially in terms of any walkways or entranceways that you're trying to. If you're using it to kind of flank an entranceway, just make sure you give it lots of room to grow. Even though these things grow slow, you'll be looking at it in a few years' time, probably 8 or 10 years' time, and say, shoot, I wish I had planted just a little bit more to the left or the right or whatever.
Now that's the main tag. When I took it out of the pot to plant it yesterday, inside the root in the root ball, I found another smaller tag, and I'm just curious what it means. It says number 2 -CG liner and in brackets low graft. Is that from that plant?
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure that I didn't realize they were grafted, but I mean, it could be a grafted variety. Certainly, I mean, you can graft spruces, and I've done it myself a few times.
You think that tag came from that plant? I wonder if it was just a tag from something else.
It's hard to know for sure. I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure. It could be just a mix-up in the nursery production.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious, but if blue spruce, I'm sure the regular Colorado blue spruce isn't grafted, but I wonder if other varieties like the Hoopsie and the Fat Albert and the Globe do you think they're grafted?
Don't think so. No, I think they're all grown from tissue culture or from seed.
Finally, I planted about 2 or 3 years ago. I planted a rhododendron for a friend of mine, and I got lots, and they're doing really well. But the one I planted for my friend a few years ago did really good up till last year. Now it's right in by the foundation of his house, and it's kind of the leaves have gone a bit yellowish. And I'm wondering, is it maybe from the lime from the foundation or something?
Oh, I guess that could be it. Because they could be leaching some from the cement. But but I've seen rhododendrons uptight the houses all around, the island, really all around the city, especially, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. Usually, yellowing is more a case of fertilizer, lack of fertilizer, and it needs something to like nitrogen in the soil to help green up those leaves. So I would look for a general purpose fertilizer, or you can even find a rhododendron fertilizer if you're curious or if you're concerned about wanting to make sure you give them the right thing, find the right product. You can actually find a bottle of fertilizer that says rhododendron fertilizer, and it's got all those proportions of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium worked out for the grower, and then you don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, I kind of always thought that was a little bit too acidic.
The rhododendron fertilizer?
Yes, evergreen fertilizer.
Yeah. Well, you can look for rhododendron fertilizer in particular. But generally our soils are acidic anyway, so it's more about the nutrient levels in those fertilizers that you're looking for. You need something to help green up those leaves, and that usually comes from nitrogen. Yeah,
I was wondering if it's not iron deficiency.
No, iron deficiency would show differently. You'd see like veining in the leaves. You'd see the main veins within the leaves will be prominent, and if that's not the case, if it's just yellow throughout, then it's usually a nitrogen.
Finally, normally I was thinking it needed a bit of a feeding, but normally my rhododendron I don't feed them until it blooms. What do you think about feeding timing?
Yeah, well, they're going to bloom pretty soon, within the next month or so. So I generally find that in Newfoundland it generally doesn't matter too much. They're going to bloom anyways, and it'll take a little bit of time for the fertilizer to become active in the soil anyway. So when you apply it, especially if it's for instance, if it's a granular fertilizer, it has to dissolve in the soil and then become available to the plant roots. So I would suggest that you put it on, within the next few weeks. And then it may coincide with flowering, but that's okay because it'll take another week or two for it to dissolve and become available for the plant anyway. So that should be okay.
I thank you so very kindly, and happy gardening, everyone, and happy Bee Day.
Thanks, George.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I need to get some of that fertilizer. I've got a rhododendron in our backyard, and the leaves are like just a little yellowish. It's just really small, so it's grown. It grew a little bit like first year in the house, right? So we inherited it. I was like, look, a little rhododendron. It did not flower last year, but it grew a little bit. Yeah. So this year I'll give it some. So it needs nitrogen. So I'll do that, and then we'll.
It's a bit more of a challenge for you because you don't know what the soil is like there if you inherited when you got the house.
Yeah.
So, rhododendrons like fairly organic, especially peat-based soil because they like that acidic soil. So generally when you're planting a rhododendron, you incorporate a lot of organic matter into the soil. You loosen up the soil really well, take out all the rocks and put in, especially if it's hard pan soil. You don't want to be planting in a hard pan soil anyways, but if you only got this one place and you want a rhododendron, then you really have to fix up that soil.
All right.
And so if your previous owner didn't do that, fertilizers and they're not going to do it.
So what do I got to do?
You just have to. Well, you check the soil. You can actually get a fork and just go out there and fork around the roots. But be careful because rhododendron roots are
around.
Rhododendrons have roots really close to the surface, so be mindful of that. And but you can easily know what the soil structure is like by just digging the fork in. If it goes in nice and easy and loose, then you're okay. Yeah. If you got to stand on that fork to get it into the ground, then you've got a problem, or the rhododendron's got a problem because it's trying to push roots out into this hard pan soil, and that's not what they prefer.
So then if it is hard pan, I have a feeling it is.
Yeah.
So then is it like do I do like a big dig around and like?
Yeah. So I'd be depending on the size of the plant. I mean, I've lifted them up and literally go around and cut a nice root ball and take the whole thing up and sit it on a burlap or in a wheelbarrow or something like that. Hold all the roots together as you do that. Then fix up the soil properly. Dig it through, dig it nice and deep and get rid of all the rocks and all that sort of business. Work in some peat moss and some compost and then replant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this. Well, I'll check it, but I feel like this is what I'm gonna. It's not very big, so
Yeah, yeah. If it's a small rhododendron, then it's a very doable task.
Like it's just above my knee.
Oh yeah. Yes, yeah.
Like this is not.
I think you can do that. Yes.
And folks, here, I don't know if you can see this picture. This is Fred just texted it in. It says. Just waiting. It's a picture of his backyard. So you've got some raised beds. There's like it looks like if you picture like an Olympic stadium before the Olympics, but all the stuff is ready for the athletes. Now think backyard with raised beds and everything's empty, ready for the season.
That's beautiful.
You know, the Coliseum is ready here for some gardening.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on there. That's great. A nice little greenhouse there at the back and raised beds ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us 709-327-8206, the signal at cbc.ca. It is gardening and bee day. So World Bee Day, folks. That's right, buzz. We've got two guests here, Tim Walsh, nursery manager for Memorial University's Botanical Garden, and Raylan White, master beekeeper. What did you do to get ready for today? Because you were somewhere this morning, too, right?
Oh, boy. Yeah. Well, I got up at 3 o'clock this morning, actually, and had to kind of fix up the presentation that I did at Juniper Ridge. So I'd like to give a shout out to Juniper Ridge. I just left those grade 7s. What a great morning I had. So there was 3 different groups. So I gave presentation for 3 hours, and it was wonderful. And always when I go to schools and I present education and information about bees, I'm always walking away amazed with how much they know. Like kids, like they knew about drones, I knew about worker bees, I knew about the queen. It amazes me.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun this morning.
So you're doing all the ins and outs of bees, right?
Absolutely.
With kids, with young
Absolutely.
people.
So I go to a lot of Girl Guides and Scouts and bee school, like bee schools. I wish there was a bee school. Like schools and stuff, all different ages, and love it. So it's just education. That's the big thing that I'm in. Obviously, yes, I do beekeep, but education, a big piece. The more people I can reach, the better.
And what are for themes, right? For the education, what are some of the driving themes around bees and the education you're talking about?
Yeah, so for me, it's more like hive maintenance, pollination. Obviously, that goes hand in hand with my buddy Tim here. This morning I did actually talk about pollination. So I was pretty impressed because that's Tim's category. But I did okay. The kids, I'm sure, thought I did well.
Here's the United Nations on this, right? It says, we all depend on the survival of bees. Bees and other pollinators, such as butterflies, bats, and hummingbirds, are increasingly under threat from human activities. Pollination is, however, a fundamental process for the survival of our ecosystems. Nearly 90% of the world's wild flowering plant species depend entirely, or at least in part, on animal pollination, along with more than 75% of the world's food crops and 35% of global agricultural land. Not only do pollinators contribute directly to food security, but they are key to conserving biodiversity.
Absolutely.
The more you know.
Isn't that incredible? Most times we don't think about that. We just go to the grocery store and buy our food, right? We think it comes from a farm somewhere else and don't really think about what that plant has gone through in order to get to us.
Yeah.
And and everything that produces, a root that we eat or a fruit or a vegetable that we eat produces a flower. And especially the fruits in particular, they depend 100% on pollination, and that happens through insects.
The theme this morning that I said to the kids or young people was that flowers are sneaky because they produce this nectar, this sweet nectar.
That's
and
right.
Really that's what the bees are really after.
Yep.
Yes, they like pollen, but the nectar is a thing. And as soon as they enter the plant, obviously, to get the nectar, they're covered with this pollen.
That's right. Yeah.
So plants are sneaky.
They are, aren't
so
they?
Then bees obviously go from plant to plant, and there goes the fertilization and pollination. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I've always been amazed by that process, and in the whole process of evolution, really, because that's how it all happened over millions of years. Yeah. But as humans, we just claim everything for ourselves, right? Yeah. So we we think that the plants, the beautiful smelling plant, is all for us. It's just to attract us because we're so marvelous, and they just want to bow down to us. It has nothing to do with us.
No.
Nothing to do with us. It is all about attracting pollinators. That's what the smell's all about. That's what the flower is all about. And they see flowers differently, and they see landing patterns ultravioletly on the petals of flowers that we don't see. And then they're attracted for both those reasons. And it's all about pollination.
I think there's a reason why we used to think the Earth was the center of the universe.
Yes, exactly.
But I think that's a psychology course for or a study for a different show. Juanita's on the line from Torbay. Hey,
right.
How you doing? Hi.
Enjoy your show, so thanks for taking my call.
Oh, thanks for calling.
My question today actually is, I've planted a lot of seeds in my greenhouse, and I've had the best luck yet with germination. I just want to know, or if you could recommend a fertilizer, or what kind of fertilizer should I use, and when should I use it in the greenhouse? There are only some flowers. I got some veg in there, not much, but a few flowers, and I just wanted to know what to use.
Juanita, probably the most commonly used fertilizer for that application is a basic water soluble fertilizer, and there's a couple of different formulas. Usually, when we're growing things at the botanical garden in the nursery, when we're starting plants off and they're brand new and they're just germinated, what we want is good root development and good shoot development, and that comes with a high phosphorus fertilizer. So the phosphorus. Are you familiar with fertilizers and those numbers on the fertilizer ratio?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They are always in that order, and they always represent the same things. And the middle number is the phosphorus, and that phosphorus stimulates root development, and it stimulates flower development as well. But root development is really important when we're starting off plants at the beginning and when they first germinate. So we generally apply a 10-52-10, which is a very commonly called transplant fertilizer. And that's the first fertilizer that the plants get after we germinate them, and especially after we transplant them. I'm not sure, Juanita, if you started your plants off in a seed tray maybe and then just transplanted them into larger pots. Is that how you do it, or do you do them individually in their own?
No, I did it in the little pots, and now I'm transplanting into larger pots.
Yeah. So that transplanting is a bit of a shock for the plants, and so that's where this fertilizer comes in really good, because it helps that plant get through that shock, and it helps to stimulate that new root development, which is exactly what you want at that point. And then after a couple of weeks after that, then you just switch over to a general purpose fertilizer, and that's a 20-20-20. It's 20% of all of those ingredients, and it's a nice, well-balanced fertilizer that'll help your plants, move along into proper development.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck with it.
Thanks, Juanita.
Thank you. I do have a bee question.
Oh, yeah, no,
okay.
hey, this is what we're here for.
Okay, I just had a question. Last year or the year before, we had a bee that I think I used an app identifier, and it was boring a little hole in one of my raised beds. Am I correct in thinking that could be a carpenter bee?
Did you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't a bumblebee. Okay, because bumblebees are the ones that usually go like in burrows and little holes and stuff like that. But it could have been a carpenter bee. I have seen them in my apiary. Apparently, my apiary attracts all kinds of bees.
Oh, yeah.
I had a leafcutter bee last year, which is pretty cool. But absolutely, usually the carpenter bees are solitary bees, so they're not like honeybees and that there's going to be a hive or a group of them. Or like bumblebees, they're all individual.
Yeah, it was just one. It was
for
one
sure.
that kept coming and going.
Yeah,
Yes.
so people often
Okay.
ask, like, how could I help those kind of bees? And I would say, like, those little hotels that you can see, like people make, they're actually good for those kind of bees because they are solitary.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We had
Thank you. Bye.
a leafcutter bee in the botanical garden. Well, we probably have more than one, but I did see one day, and
love
it was
them.
the most interesting thing because I
is.
saw this thing flying, and it looked it didn't look balanced, like it looked
Yeah.
off.
Hey, that's me on the best of days.
That's you. It was an atom bee.
Yeah, an atom leafcutter bee.
And what it was the bee was coming with a piece of leaf. And so
neat.
it was flying down with this
It's
piece
almost
of
like
leaf.
they have a little burrito in between their legs because the way they roll the leaf, like it's pretty darn cool.
And then it landed right where I was and then went underground under a rock or something and brought this leaf in there,
I love them.
That's pretty good.
We got a couple emails and texts. Let me see. Hi, Adam. Wonderful to hear gardening again. Well, thank you. And it's back all season, folks, back to mid-October. Every Tuesday, gardening day here on The Signal. Here's a bee question.
What?
If I decide to establish a beehive, do I need special permits or anything?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah,
how does
you
that
should
work?
check with your local municipalities and stuff. They do have some requirements that you have to meet. Every municipality is different, so I'm not going to pinpoint different ones. But I've ran into a lot of problems with others, but other municipalities are pretty easy to get along with. So
Yeah,
just
there's a
check
big
them out.
range with
It
municipalities
is.
in the province for
Absolutely.
what, you go to a different spot. There's different views on different things.
Yeah.
Like I was running the other day and I heard a rooster somewhere, and in some communities, you're not going to be hearing a rooster.
And unfortunately,
right,
I think it's just lack of education because, honeybees aren't aggressive. They're not going to sting you like wasps.
They're not murder hornets.
Oh, my goodness, no, right? So I can go up in my apiary any day and bees are landing all over me. I don't get stung. So I think it's just a lack of education of people not sure of, is it going to be a big threat to our community? And definitely not. If anything, it'll be beneficial in regards to the pollination with the plants.
Yeah, and to go along with that, we have a couple of beehives at the Botanical Garden. We have 3, actually. And 2 of them are not much further than the width of this room from the main pathway in the middle of the garden.
Yeah.
And we have a sign that says, look down here and you can see this beehive. So because we want people to know that it's there. But the point I'm trying to make is that nobody's ever been hurt by that beehive, and it's been there for years, even though it's only within 10 feet of the pathway.
On one of the running trails in town, I a couple times a week run next to. There's a really I won't say where, but there's a really nice garden, and they've got a little beehive in back, and so I see it all the time when I'm going by. And you would never, unless you.
Absolutely.
It's only because I'm gawking at the great flowers that they have inside, because the whole thing is it's spectacular, this garden. And then I noticed they had a little sign there, and I was like, oh, but you would never know, right?
That's right.
And I'm within feet, 4 feet.
That's the thing. I mean, when you think of worker bees, like the forager bees, they don't really forage within their garden. They fly about 5 kilometers ranged in order to get the forage that they need. So one particular area is not going to be totally full of bees. Right. It's not going to happen that way.
Yeah, so folks, if you are meeting bee resistance out there, the signal at cbc.ca for emails. We can always have a chat about that. The lines are open for Gardening Day and Bee Talk. 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. The other point in that text was... let me see. Cool is good this time of year. Flowers last longer, or our forsythia is still blooming. One of my favorites, right?
Yeah.
Busting with yellow when you
Beautiful.
go around. So great this time of year.
Yeah.
The question from Don from Salmon Cove. Hi, Don, by the way. How do you protect flowers against frost, i.e. apple flowers?
Oh, Don.
Prayer?
It's impossible. Yeah. Because the thing is, you think about it, the plant is pushing out these flowers. They're fairly delicate. And they're opening up, they're doing their thing, hoping to get pollinated. And really, there's not much you can do unless you can throw a blanket over them. But it's usually a difficult thing to do with such a large plant, right? A large tree in this case. Sometimes you can hose down or sprinkle with a fine mist of water over plants when there's a danger of frost late into the year. And what will happen is that the moisture will absorb the cold and not so much, that won't penetrate the plant as much. But when it comes to a large plant like that, you're really just at the mercy of Mother Nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's a point from earlier in the show from Anne in St. John's. Encouraging gardeners to start cleaning up the gardens in May ignores the fact that underneath the garden debris, leaves, stems, etc., there are overwintering insects, cocoons, etc., that want to stay cozy until the weather's consistently warm. Please encourage listeners to have consideration for the beneficial garden insects that need to stay in bed for a few more weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. And some people will actually go out to their garden in the spring and only take off a small amount, just because some folks like a little bit more of an aesthetic with their garden, as opposed to a bit more of a wild effect, I guess. And eventually, though, those leaves that are sitting there, if you go out there yourself and you're cleaning up your garden, there's no doubt about it. When you're taking off some of the debris that's been sitting there, there's earthworms that have come to the surface. They're there, and there's other beetles and things of that nature. All wonderful. Some folks will actually leave that there and then just put down a layer of mulch on top of that, because the mulch will actually contain it. It'll and then you'll get that nice consistent surface that you're looking for with your mulch, whether it's a compost or something like that, and all that organic material that's been sitting there all winter, supporting all the life that your guest was talking about, can just continue to live underneath that mulch, and you've got that cleaned up look from your mulch.
We've got Bob on the line from South River. Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good.
How are you, Bob?
Hey, Tim. I'm just listening to the program driving into the city. I just pulled over here now. Couple of questions. Something new for me. I'm building a greenhouse. I almost have it finished now. And so I have these storm windows on it with screens that they can pop up, right? So when you were talking about the pollination, I have two questions. This first one, the pollination. Basically, the access they're going to have is through my front door. So is that enough, or do I need to have more openings for the wonderful pollinators that, to kind of get in, get out?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the plants, like tomatoes, for instance, are self-pollinating. So you really don't need pollinators for that. You just need a little bit of air circulation. And generally in greenhouses, Bob, most of the plants that you grow in there are self-pollinating. And I know that some people do some interesting things in order to stimulate that pollination. For instance, like
makeup brush,
like a brush, like a battery-powered battery-powered toothbrush.
Oh, there you go.
And just touch it against the stem, and it causes a vibration in the plant, and it releases the pollen into
boring CSI.
Yeah. So depending on what you're growing, Bob, but you'd probably be growing like tomatoes and maybe.
Actually, our tomatoes are outside. We grew them last year outside and had great results. So we're going to keep them outside. And,
right.
It remains to be seen. Probably peppers. I don't know. Just going to see what happens with that. So. Just wondering, because again, it's only going to be both doors on each end kind of thing, right?
Yeah. The one thing about pollinators, like a bee, for instance, in your house, is that oftentimes when they come in, it's by accident, and then they don't know how to get out, and they're flying towards the light, and they're hitting against the window, and they don't often know how to get out. So that's
right. I've done many a rescue like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and certainly, you can rescue them out of your greenhouse. But in my case, at the botanical garden, the greenhouse is like 20 feet high, so they get up in the attic of the greenhouse, and I find them on the floor the next day, and they're finished.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry too much about it. But some of the plants that have lesser numbers of flowers, like peppers, for instance, you can easily hand pollinate those with just a little like a little brush, like a little artist brush, and just go and just go from flower to flower with a little just touch off one flower and just touch off the next, and you can make a little buzzing sound while you're doing this, Bob.
We got some outfit recommendations too, if you want.
And because outside tomato plants, we used to just shake them too and get
exactly. Yeah.
One more question, and I don't want to take up too much time. The second question I have is, so right now I have Class A on the ground, on the inside the greenhouse, right?
Right.
So what I'm wondering is, because whether I will pull back some of the Class A and just get down to the the topsoil that's there, or go on top of the Class A, put a barrier there, and then go up from there. What would you recommend?
In terms of building your bed to grow things in the greenhouse? Generally, it's easier to maintain a raised bed, I find. So, usually what folks will do is they'll either grow in very large containers, like very large pots, or just build boxes within the greenhouse in order to raise the bed up. It's much easier to build soil, in a container as opposed to like digging down into the soil. And it gives you a little bit more of a height too, makes it a little bit more easier to manage. That little bit of an extra raised bed off the ground, just it's a little bit easier on the back even.
What are you trying to say? I'm old or something?
Well, full disclosure, I know this caller.
I've sensed that through the course of the call.
We're around the same vintage, so yes, every little bit helps, Bob.
Yeah. No, that's great. No, I was just wondering that, but I loved it. So glad the show was back, and I was really, especially about the bees. So, no, thanks very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
All
Okay,
right.
take care.
All right. Gosh, we got a few emails in, so we'll have to go a little faster with because we got a few to get through. But there's a bee question here too, as well. Hi, Adam. Wonder if you could get your bee expert to talk about the importance of using local bees when setting up a new hive. I believe the permit would be required to import them, but could you speak to the lack of disease here and the importance of keeping it that way?
That's a fabulous question. Thank you for asking
Thanks,
that.
Elizabeth, for that note.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So, Newfoundland has the healthiest bees in the whole world. We have the strongest bees in the whole world. And thankfully, the provincial government back in 1980 passed a law that we are not allowed to import any honeybees into the province. So the honeybees that we have in the province are from the province. And because of that, we're the only place in the world, really, that doesn't have varroa. Now, varroa is a little pest that gets on a bee. It's like a vampire and sucks all the hemolymph out of the bee, but also gives disease to the bee. So we don't have that, and we don't have wax moth, and we don't have hive beetle. We don't have foul brood. There's so many diseases that we don't have. So let's keep it that way. There's no importation of honeybees. So that's the first thing. That's wonderful. So in regards to getting bees for your hive, it would be all local anyway because you're not allowed to bring in any importation. So there's lots of beekeepers. There's a lot out on the West Coast, and I know some in the St. John's region that will have nukes available. So the big thing, too, is that, I'm always a big fan of, go to places that are recognizable, that you have dealt with in the past, and have a look at your nuke before you actually take it home. Make sure you got a queen. Make sure you have brood. Make sure you have a resource frame. All those things is what you need to have a look at before you bring it home.
Yeah, so your nuke is like your little bee bundle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent for bringing home. All right. Thanks for that email. Thanks for the answer and the context on all of that. Let me see. Here are a couple questions. I have, this is the emailer. I have two 12-year-old Stella cherry trees that have been affected by a caterpillar infestation over the past 2 years. The trees leaf out normally in spring, but haven't produced any flowers, and the caterpillars gradually defoliate them over the summer. By August, the foliage is sparse, and by September, the trees are completely bare. What can I do to prevent the caterpillars from returning this year? I've attached a few photos from last season for reference. I'll have to check the photos in my email on that. But Tim, thoughts?
Yeah, and it's no fun. I will say that. Caterpillars are fairly easily controlled by a BTK. If it's an actual caterpillar, I'd be interested to know what the problem is specifically on the cherry. But caterpillars in particular, there's an organic product called BTK, and it's readily available at nurseries. Just mix it in some water. It comes in a concentrate and spray it down. And when the caterpillars then ingest that, it affects their stomach lining, and they can't feed, and they die fairly quickly. They die from dehydration. So, yeah, I'm looking at those pictures now. And hang on, I got to get a little closer.
Sorry. I'm scared to turn the screen anymore. Chrissy will get mad at me later for breaking it. All right.
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple of problems there. It looks like there's definitely a caterpillar been eating on there, but there's also, looks like there's some fungal problems too. So similar to the person with the Amelanchier call, the first caller, that looks like there's some, because there's a lot of spotting on the leaves there. It looks very fungal. So I would suggest that that this person also get a fungal spray out there. The thing about caterpillars, unfortunately, is that there's no point in spraying anything on there until you see them.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is, they start feeding immediately after they hatch, and so they could be out there feeding. Unless you take a really close look, you're not going to know. And then all of a sudden, you're starting to see damage, and that's often the first indication that they're there. But if you get out there earlier and get a really close inspection of the foliage, once you start to see them, get that BTK on there, and that'll get them when they're very early on, and then prevent a lot of the damage that you're seeing on the picture here.
What about red beetles on tiger lilies? There we go.
Yes. the lily beetle. So that's a kind of a new problem for us in Newfoundland. It's been a problem in the mainland parts of North America for quite some time. Unfortunately, there's not really a lot we can do about that one. They're voracious eaters. They're able to find lilies incredibly well, and a lot of folks are now discovering them in their garden. Most of the people I talk to have small lily collections, so not like 50, 60 different varieties, but just maybe 2 or 3, and they're actually going out on a regular basis and finding them and just pinching them between their fingers and taking care of them that way. It's a bit of a messy job, but
whatever gets the job
it depends
done.
What do you want most? Do you want nice lilies, or do you want a beetle collection? But that seems to be the best solution. There may be a couple of sprays available, and you have to talk to your local nursery about that. But I think the most organic way to do it would be just to pinch them off when you see them.
Email from Fred. BBQ is life is how he signs off all of his emails. Was making pizza dough. Yes, all the seeds are indoors still. Tomes, zooks, greens, charged, mixed greens. Trying to grow parsley root again. Ugh. In the garden, the herbs, chives, and horseradish are on their own. Fred, I just love updates, right? Just if you're growing stuff.
He's got a lot going on there.
He's a busy guy.
He's busy.
I like
he's
that.
busy little.
Yeah,
he's a little bee.
He's got a busy bee. Yeah, that's right. But he's got a lot going on there, and that's that's the reality for a lot of people who like to grow food, especially. Is that you really it benefits your results if you get that jump on the season, and that's why people like Bob, who called earlier, has a greenhouse, because the greenhouse is all about getting that jump start on the season. And oftentimes people will use either the greenhouse or sometimes a kitchen window to start things off, and they're timing it perfectly so that the plants are not going to be indoors for too long. They're not going to get leggy where they're reaching for light. And it's all about timing so that when the temperatures outside are perfect to move those plants outdoors, the plants are right at that perfect stage. And that's I think probably the key to making it work is getting used to that timing, and know that there's going to be years you're going to be a little bit off with that timing because the outdoor temperatures don't warm up as quickly as you'd like them to, or maybe you were a little bit overzealous because you're watching what's happening on the mainland, and you said, I got to get things going, and you start those seeds off a little too early.
Stop following people on Instagram on the mainland.
Exactly.
All it does is mess up your garden, right?
Exactly,
Get all excited.
Yeah, stay closer to home with that stuff. For sure.
Yes, exactly. Just follow local accounts as they grow.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Raylan, last tip, give us a tip for a takeaway on this World Bee Day for folks. Briefly.
So, World Bee Day is a day just to provide education and awareness on honeybee population and the importance that they have in our ecosystem. That's good, Tim. I learned that one for Tim. So it just brings more awareness to honeybees. I would also like to think it would bring more awareness if people want to start getting into beekeeping again, provide education, connect with a mentor, and get as much information as you need before you get started on that.
And we're going to have you back later in the season too. So this is great. I appreciate you being part of the club.
Thank you for
here.
inviting me.
Can I quickly add a little bit of the work that Raylan's been doing with us down at the HMP at His Majesty's Penitentiary with the Phoenix Gardening Project, which I've been a part of since its inception, and a bunch of other wonderful people. And Raylene joined us a couple of years ago, and now there's a beehive down at HMP.
There's two,
now. There's two beehives, and the guys get to go out and work on that with Raylene, so it's been really great.
We got a minute and a half left, Tim.
Okay.
Rhododendron, we have one, a huge one, and we have to cut it back because it's intruding on our backyard access. How do we prune, and how hard can we prune?
So if you prune it really hard, you're pruning off all of this year's flowers. So that's the thing. Rhododendrons produced their flowers the previous year, getting ready for the flower in the spring. So my recommendation for a situation like this is to prune some this year, some next year, and maybe some the next year after. It's not something that you would do all in one season, unless you're okay with losing all your flowers for this year.
Still waiting on flowers of mine for the first time ever. Another one, burning bush, and there are a number of burning bush offspring coming up under it, but they look like they're coming out of the roots. How do we get those out so we can transplant to other locations and not hurt the original bush?
They're probably from seed, actually, because burning bushes don't sucker. That's what happens. Suckering is when a plant comes up from the existing root. So just get in there with a hand trowel and cut a little circle around that plant, including the roots, and lift that up and easily transplant it.
All right, literally 30 seconds. I have a small raised wooden veggie garden bed built about 9 years ago, filled with topsoil, compost, peat, vermiculite. Every year there seems to be a little more moss growing on the surface of the soil. It's now a very thin but consistent blanket.
Yeah.
I add compost, manure, and lime every year. No other fertilizers. Till them up and rotate my crops. What does this indicate, Tim, and what should I do about it?
Usually it's lime, because lime is acidic. Lime makes the soil less acidic. But I would wonder if there's enough drainage. Vermiculite might be causing a lot excess moisture to hold up in the soil. So I would get something in there to loosen up that soil.
Loosen up the soil.
Yeah.
Good old vermiculite being part of it. Okay. Thanks for this. Gosh, we're out of time. Thank you both for this. Folks, that's it for the show today. Tomorrow on the show, we dive into business and the barriers of doing business. We'll talk about what women and gender diverse folks need to give their ideas a fair shot in the province, and how one project is calling for you to be part of the change. That's tomorrow. Bye.